when the dean of admissions at USC said, "We've never had a blind student. I'm not sure you can do it. How will you convince me that you can do the work here at the law school?" And I said, "Sir, the only way you'll know for sure is to let me in."
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. You're in for a treat because my special guest today is Mr. Dana LaMon, all the way from California, Lancaster, California. And he's going to tell me all about his literacy journey as a blind person. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I like to talk.
Well, I want to start by having you introduce yourself to the audience. And right off the bat, I want you to tell me whether you prefer to be called a blind person or a visually impaired person, and what are you most comfortable with? So let's find out who you are.
I am Dana LaMon. I am in Lancaster, California, which is part of Los Angeles County. And I am a 68-year-old guy who was born in Compton, California. I became blind when I was 4 years old from an accident, and blind is fine with me. You asked the important question, though. Generally speaking, people want to know, well, what's the appropriate term? What is politically correct? And more specifically, politically correct is what the person prefers to be called. I have no problem with being called blind. That states specifically what my physical condition is. I cannot see at all, so I am blind. Visually impaired is a term that can be used for people who have a vision problem, but they're still able to see.
We are really going to focus in on your literacy journey because as a person, I just love to read. And I'm thinking, well, if I were blind, I wouldn't be able to read. But that is not true at all. So I want you to tell me how you are able to be such a literate person, and tell us about your career, your background, because then people will really be curious about how did he become a judge, etc., as a blind person. So
Yeah.
you told me to call you Dana, but that's just so hard for me. Okay, but I'll do it. Okay, Dana, tell me about your career.
Well, I am retired now, but I worked for 29 years as a judge. More specifically, I was an administrative law judge working for the California Department of Social Services. As administrative law judge, it was my responsibility to conduct administrative hearings whenever there was a dispute or disagreement by someone who had been receiving or had applied for social services benefits. I retired 10 years ago. So most of my time now is spent either in my professional speaking business or volunteering at one of the local high schools. I happen to be the mentor for 3 clubs at the local high school. I work with Mock Trial.
Oh, that's a good one.
I work with the Speech Club.
Yeah, of course.
And I work with the newest one is a club called Girls Build. And it's a team of girls that are involved in civic engagement activities. I went to Yale University as an undergraduate and majored in math. And I went to the University of Southern California Law School where I got my law degree.
And when
came back to California and went to University of Southern California Law School. And
so you went undergrad, you went far away from home, all the way to the East Coast.
I did, and I did that intentionally. When I applied to colleges, I applied to one in California, and that one was in Northern California. And then I applied to 5 on the East Coast. It was my full intent to go to the other side of the country to see what the other side of the country was like.
And did you?
I did. I enjoyed it. I appreciate traveling for the purpose of interacting with other people. I don't travel for touristy type objectives. One obvious reason is that I'm blind, so I can't see buildings and monuments and museums and things of that sort. Yeah. But I travel to interact with people. I appreciated being at Yale because I had a chance to interact with people who lived on the East Coast, the Midwest, who lived in China and India and Africa and Europe, and so it was a nice place to be. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, so then after undergraduate, you came back to California and went
Came
to,
back to California and I went to University of Southern California Law School.
with all that background that you have just explained, it's just even more remarkable, Mr. LaMon, that you have done all this, traveled across the country as a young person, as a blind person. Come on, tell me, how in the world, first of all, academically, how did you read?
I did learn Braille. And here's the interesting thing about my reading experience.
Yes.
When I was reading with my eyes, I loved reading. My family, my siblings, and I would walk to the library to get books and bring them home and read them. And as I was losing my sight and I couldn't read, it was harder and harder to read the print. I continued to read to the point that I would actually take the lampshade off the lamp to get enough light so that I could see the print in the book and read. So I actually continued to read until I couldn't see the print anymore. And then I started reading Braille, and I actually disliked reading. When I was reading Braille, I didn't want to read anymore in terms of just pleasure reading. Braille is slow though, and Braille is takes up a lot of space.
Mm.
And in Braille, they can produce it faster now because they can do it with a computer. But then when you had to do hand copied Braille, it took a long time to convert something or transcribe something into Braille.
Oh my.
So there weren't a whole lot of books available. But when I went to Yale, there was nothing available in Braille. So my primary reading method in college was
Yes.
to have someone read to me, and they would either read directly to me or they would record. I generally preferred their recording so that I can go back and play it back as often as I needed to.
Sure, that makes sense.
But to give you an idea of how long ago, they were recording on a reel-to-reel tape recorder.
Okay, I remember those. My dad had one of those. Yes. Okay.
So I used a reel-to-reel tape recorder at Yale.
Okay.
I used a manual typewriter to type my assignments for the professors. So I had to have a reader to read stuff back to me after I typed it, to read it back to me to make sure it was what I intended, to correct any mistakes or anything of that sort. So at Yale, the majority of what I did was either audio and typewritten when I had to turn it in to the instructors. Mathematics.
That's what I was going to get to. I was going to ask you about math.
Mathematics was better in Braille, but nobody knew, including me, the advance. I needed to have it in Braille, but I didn't. I was involved in such advanced mathematic symbols that in learning Braille, I did not know, what is the appropriate Braille combination to create the symbol. But it didn't matter because I was brailing for myself. So I created my own symbols.
And you did say that your degree was in math from Yale?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, since you devised your own method, did your professors understand? Were they able to see your equations? Did they?
Well, they didn't need to see my Braille. My professors, I had to type everything for them.
Okay.
So sometimes, most of the times, there was some, the symbols I could find on the typewriter. Sometimes what I had to do is with my assistant, have them insert the symbol for me. But most of the time, the professor would accept my just writing the word that represented, like the Greek letters of the alphabet were not available on the typewriter. So if I needed a delta, I could just write the word delta and the professor would accept it.
I imagine that since you've been blind at the age of 4, you've always had an assistant. I know you had a large family, what, 11 brothers and sisters?
I've had 1,000 assistants probably. My
Wow.
brothers and sisters were helpful to me. I try to be as independent as possible. I happen to be one that believes in possibilities, and so I will try to do it myself. But I find that you always need assistance. I don't think there's anything that any of us do, whether we have a disability or not. There's very little that we can claim that we did it all alone. There's always someone who was a predecessor who paved the way, or who's concurrently with you, assisting you. So I have no problem with that. I appreciate, as this is, in fact, people ask me about using my cane. I don't use my cane for travel very often. I much prefer being with a person uh, because I like the interaction
Sure.
with people.
That's
Uh,
good.
so, so yes, I've had lots of
You're a
assistants.
friendly guy.
I try to be, but I'm also known to be, I'm also very hard, since we go back to my assistants. So say for the 29 years that I worked as a judge,
Okay.
I had 23 different assistants, people that were hired to work with me. There's two reasons for having so many. One reason is if they couldn't meet up to my standard, I didn't keep them around very long.
Okay.
I am very hard on myself. I commit myself to excellence, and
Yeah.
I want my work to be excellent. And if my assistant can't give me the assistance that keeps me at that level of excellence, then
Yeah.
they can't stay around. But the other reason why I would have so many is I also believe in helping others. So when I have an assistant, my goal is to help them develop to the point that they're ready to move on to something else other than assisting me.
I'm just still in awe. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how are you, let's go to law school, because I went to law school for a little bit. My son's a lawyer, and my son and I have had these discussions about how much reading there is in law, just those copious amounts of cases. And did you have someone read all of that, all your law courses to you? How did you do that?
It was a combination of several things. One is I relied heavily, both at Yale and in law school, on the organization Recording for the Blind. So
Recording for the blind. Okay.
I would obtain the books that I needed to have. I would always have to buy 2 copies of it because Recording for the Blind required 2, one for the reader and one for the monitor. But I would obtain the books and send them to Recording for the Blind, and they would record textbooks. So that I had. I also had to rely on students, fellow students who volunteered to read for me. So if I had to do research in the library, that I couldn't have Recording for the Blind do. I had to have fellow students who were willing to do it. But I also had paid readers. The Department of Rehabilitation that assisted me through school set aside X number of dollars. Give you an idea, back to the time when I was at Yale, I think it was $132 a month they gave me because I paid them $1.65 an hour. So I had those paid readers that read for me. That became, like, for some students, that was their work study.
Now let's get to the bar exam.
The bar exam, I had a reader in the exam with me.
Okay.
I took the bar exam 3 times before I passed.
Sure.
And the first time I petitioned the committee of bar examiners, and I said I told them I needed probably a separate place to take the exam, and I needed to have a reader in the room with me. I committed to having a person who did not have a legal background, so that they wouldn't have to be concerned with, are they helping me,
Sure.
giving me the answers. Generally speaking, people who I went to church with would agree to be a reader. for me and go to the bar exam. So they would read the question to me, and then I would type my answer. I had my manual typewriter there. So the bar they had to put me in a separate room because the typewriter would have been too much noise, disturbing other people. So that's how I did the bar exam. Yeah. See, then we're talking 70, 77, and 78. And that was before the Americans with Disabilities Act. In fact, once I left high school, I was on my own to make my own argument, to make my own accommodation. And generally speaking, I encountered good help. When I applied to Yale, Yale was reluctant to accept me because they hadn't had a blind undergraduate before.
Wait,
but
you were the first, the pioneer, the first? No, that can't be.
I was the first blind undergraduate according to their admissions process, yes. And they hesitated, but they said yes. And so whatever accommodations I asked for, they were very I did not have to fight or argue for anything until much later on. I had finished law school. Generally, the schools were accommodating. In fact, Yale, they saw all the material and equipment I had to have, the space that my books took, and the fact that using a Braille writer could be disturbing to other students. So they actually gave me an office to use as a place for me to study and do my work. The professors, they would ask me, how do you take the exam? And I would explain to them. They said, okay, that's acceptable to me. Yeah. So I would have my reader to be with me when I take the exam, and so for the professors, usually I told them it will take me more time, and they were, usually very generous, very accommodating. They said, okay, well, here's the exam and bring it to me tomorrow. I did not have to fight for anything. Usually if I asked for it, it was given to me.
Yes. Now, and then going back to the law school exam, by the time you got to the third time, it was.
Yeah, by the time for the bar exam?
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting because things were evolving. I'll tell you how things evolved quite interestingly. The first time I took the bar exam, I took it in the office of the Committee of Bar Examiners. They moved someone out of their office because, the bar exam is the 3-day exam.
It is. Yes.
So they moved someone out of the office, and I used their office for those 3 days. The second year that I took it, the second time that I took it, they had arranged with a hotel nearby the testing center, and I was given a room in a hotel for taking, not to sleep there. I didn't sleep there, but I was in a hotel room where I did the exam. By the time I took it the third time, and I should say that when I took it the first time, I was the only one they were giving accommodations to. By the time I took it the third time, there's like the whole floor of the hotel. I talked to the monitor, the bar exam monitor, who was pacing the floors. She said, I don't know, we have 12, 13, 14 there. She kind of made a comment about it. She says, some of these people, they got a sprained thumb, so they need accommodation.
Okay, we're taking it too far. So you finished law school, took the bar, and then you had some other jobs, but eventually you became an administrative judge.
Yes.
I can imagine your desk with all this paperwork that you're going through to decide these rulings, make these rulings. How did you do that?
And very little of it was Braille. I had very little Braille when I worked as a judge. They hired a person full-time to be my reader and driver because my job also involved traveling to we traveled from county to county. At the time when I first started working, Los Angeles office was responsible for 11 Southern California counties, and I had to travel to the county. So I had a driver and who also was my reader. And I had a good memory. Once I write a decision and I used a particular set of regulations, when that same issue came up, I knew the regulations. I knew exactly where to tell my reader to find it. So we had volumes and volumes of binders with regulations and policy memos and things of that sort.
And don't tell me you remembered all of those.
I don't remember all of them,
mean,
but I remembered pretty much where to find them, and I could direct my reader to what I needed. So I started working in 81. In 92, computers started to become common use in our office. My first computer I got in 1987, quite interesting, 87, 88. I appeared on the game show. I was a guest on the game show, $10,000 Pyramid.
Oh, I remember that. I love that.
And one of the gifts, one of the prizes that I won was an Apple IIc computer with voice synthesizer. So up until that point, I didn't even know computers could talk to me. So that was my first computer. And so I started relying on computers that had the speech synthesizer, and it would read what was on the screen. And then as people, when I say people, meaning government agencies and companies, started putting stuff online,
yes,
it became accessible to me. I could download a document. It's a printed document. It's in PDF form, but the computer can read it. And with the speech synthesizer, it reads it out loud to me. So that's how I started communicating, and I began to be able to work more often or do more of my work even without a reader, because the reader would be there to read regulations to me and to review the work that I typed. Well, when I started using a computer and word processor for typing, I could read back my own work. And I could get the regulations myself because they were available online.
So you rely on technology today. And for example, I sent you an email. How did you read that email and you responded to me?
So I read, I have a computer that I have to tell you that I'm very slow at advancing with the technology. So I actually have multiple computers. I tend to like the older system better than the newer one. You know, as the new computers become more graphics based, they want to make it easier for you, touch screen and things of that sort. Touch screen is not so easy for people who are visually impaired. Yeah, I have to rely more on what keystrokes get what I need. Anyway, I have a speech synthesizer on the computer. The email comes in. I use Outlook Express on the computer that I use primarily for communicating via email. So when you send an email, it comes to me and it reads. When it pops up into my inbox, it will give the same tone that there's a message there, and I can go read it. It says it's from Linda Mitchell, and then I can click on it and it open up, and then I just read it. I mean, the computer speaks it to me. I hear it. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. And then you answered me. How did you do that?
Well, again, I'm using a keyboard, and so every keystroke, the speech synthesizer is saying it. So if I type "Dear Linda," the speech synthesizer is saying DEAR space LINDA. So as I work.
Okay, so it didn't spell it DEER. It didn't spell like deer.
No, and I don't have a problem with there and there as the sergeant has either.
Yeah. Oh, you heard that. And then I made a typo in my email to you. I gave you a car, remember?
Yes, you gave me a car instead of a call. Yes. So I go out every day in my driveway looking for that car too. So
no, I meant to give you a call. Now, what about your cell phone? You've got kids, your millennial kids. Are you texting them, or how is all that working?
Yes, I text, and I have a cell phone. I have one over here. So it's an iPhone, but it's got Apple's products, including the iPad and the iPhone, they have voiceover as the built-in app. And when you turn voiceover on, then the device is going to talk. As I said, you know, the modern technology is about touch screen.
Yeah.
And that's not very useful to blind people.
Now, a lot of things you've said in the past few minutes have triggered some questions in me. And one thing I want you to clarify, and it may be a myth. I've always been told or thought that if a person were blind, then all their other four senses would be heightened, or their sense of hearing so would be heightened, or their sense of touch. Something you said, I forgot what it was, that made me think about, oh, because he doesn't see, now he can hear. Oh gosh, I forgot what it was. I'm sorry. But in general, have you heard that before? That
I've heard it, and I've been asked about it many times. I cannot say that the senses are heightened. I think the senses, I would be more apt to say that the senses are recognized because you have to rely on them.
Like you rely on your hearing. You might
Yes.
rely on your hearing more than I do.
Correct. So the senses, as I said, you learn to rely on them, you learn to use them, and therefore it may seem that they're stronger, but I can't say for sure that they are.
I read all of your speeches, your talks on your website, and you just have a wonderful theme of excellence, having dreams, goals, very positive, motivating, uplifting. And I think that's remarkable because you're a man, I would have to say that most people would say that you might have a handicap, but in no way, shape, or form have I seen anything in your writing to suggest any type of pity. Oh, you should feel sorry for me, or anything. You are a champion. Tell me about you're so positive in all your writings and your speeches. Where does that come from, Dana?
I think some of it is genetic. It comes from my mother. My parents did not treat me as though I was a you can't person. I heard a lot from other people in my environment about you can't, but that's not the way I was treated. I've come to believe that if there's something I cannot do, it is because I've told myself I cannot do it. It will not be because someone else told me that I cannot do it. It could be that someone wouldn't allow me to do it. I mean, for example, when the dean of admissions at USC said, we've never had a blind student, I'm not sure you can do it. How will you convince me that you can do the work here at the law school? And I said, sir, the only way you'll know for sure is to let me in. So, and that's what my basic approach is. If you allow me to do it, and I believe that I can do it, you put those two things together and I will do it. So most of what you have to argue in life, particularly as a person with a disability, is getting people to allow you to do it. The barriers are put up more often, for me anyway, are put up more often by others, not by me. So for example, Linda, I have flown an airplane because I expressed to someone that I wanted to fly. Here where I live, it's an aerospace town.
Sure.
We have Aerospace Walk of Fame at Lancaster City.
Okay.
And many people, you might meet someone in the grocery store clerk turns out owns their own plane and flies.
Wow. Okay.
So I said, I want to fly. Well, I happened to say it to a Toastmaster. I did not know that she herself was a pilot, okay, and that her husband teaches pilots. So she went home and told her husband, she said, Dana wants to fly a plane. And he said, I think I can figure out how we can do it. So I did. So it's a matter of I believe I can. you don't get in my way, and then I will do it. That's been all my life. I can't think of a time when I said, oh, woe is me. Why did it happen to be me? Even with regard to blindness, sometimes people say, if you had the opportunity to see again, would you take that opportunity? My answer is always under one condition.
Okay.
If I don't like what I see, I can be blind again.
That's brilliant. If I don't like what I see. Good answer. Well, there's a lot of beautiful things and there's a lot of not so beautiful things.
Yeah. The point is, when you consider how the Creator put you together, you have been given 6 senses in which to perceive your environment, your world. You have the sense of sight, sense of hearing, smell, taste, feel, and believe. Belief is that 6th sense. So I haven't been there, but through your experience, I can be there. You can share with me your world, and if I believe you, I've now experienced that part of the world. And that's why I say belief is a 6th sense in perceiving the world around you.
And when we boil all this down to, because I'm passionate about literacy, I want people to use all of their senses to engage with books and literature and knowledge so that they can have a fuller life, so that they can understand. When we understand, we can get along, we can love one another. And like you said, it starts with words.
Absolutely. And it's that literacy that allows the communication. If you cannot communicate with another individual, you miss so much of the world that you would have the chance to experience. You could visit Italy, for example, and write about your experience. I don't have a chance to go, but I can read what you wrote or listen to what you wrote. And as long as I understand the words, I get to join in your experience. That's why words are important. So I would encourage any person, blind or visually impaired person, or parents who are working with blind or visually impaired children, to make sure that in addition to listening to develop their literacy, that they do find a form of actual reading, i.e. Braille or using an audio device that allows them to go letter by letter. So they also learn how to spell unfamiliar words.
I almost don't want to let you go. You have a lot of stories. You're just a fountain. You're a fountain of knowledge and inspiration. And I'm just still marveling at all that you have accomplished, Mr. LaMon.
Thank you.
Just marveling. And what you're doing to mentor the children, those kids, it's just fantastic. I hope they respect you. I really do. I hope
they do.
Well, I am so glad that on this side of heaven, you are getting your bouquets and your praises, and I'm giving them to you right now because I really, really thank you and appreciate your taking the time to let me speak with you. I think you're going to inspire a lot of people, and with your literacy journey, and for those who think they can't do it, they don't like to read, when they see you and all that you have accomplished, what excuse?
And I appreciate it, Linda. I'm glad that you invited me to be a guest, and I sincerely, since I probably have almost as strong a passion for literacy, that I hope it's beneficial in your spreading the message of the value of literacy and of knowledge.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me on Literacy Journeys with Linda. I have had the honor of talking with Mr. Dana LaMon, outstanding, and he doesn't mind me saying, a blind person, retired judge, a world champion, Toastmaster speaker, and a mentor to young people out of California. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like these videos, please click that subscribe button, and so you won't miss any of my interviews with all these wonderful people. Thank you, Dana. We'll see you next time.
All righty.
Bye.